Hello, everybody. This is Frank George. I'm with the Protection Project, and today we're going to be interviewing a gentleman by the name of Joseph Kibler, who is running for Governor of Wyoming. He's a young man, 45 years of age, and I found him to be interesting, intelligent, and very much enjoyed my conversation with him. So I hope you like this interview. Joseph, I'm so very glad that you made yourself available for this interview. I've seen your website pretty good, looked at your videos, and I've got to ask you, so that people who have not seen these videos of yours, why are you running for governor?
That's a great question, Frank. I really appreciate you asking that question. You know, I think I've really been inspired by just the recent political climate, but not only that, just the fact that I think that people, including myself, are really frustrated by representation, which seems to forget when we elect them, when they walk into the door of the Capitol, they seem to forget the commitments that they made to the people, or they say that they're a conservative, Republican, what have you, or they're, whatever they say that they are, right? And then we elect them, we put them in office, and this frustration of like, wow, they're kind of doing a mix of what they said they would do, and then they're going the opposite direction. One of the things that we got recently was like, we keep getting this promise that we're going to have smaller government. Government's going to get out of our lives. And what we're seeing is all we're doing is just moving pieces around. We're not actually coming up with solutions, whether it's with property taxes, healthcare, insurance, education, you name it. So part of my inspiration for running was really thinking, you know what? We need a citizen-run government. We need regular people with regular families and regular lives, regular day jobs, leading the ship. We need people like that are going to actually have vision, solutions, ideas, not just speak and then do something else, And for me, I'm just a regular dude. And I think that that's what we need. I did an interview with the Cowboy Daily a couple weeks ago, Frank, and the title of the interview is like, Joseph admits he's nobody. I thought about this, Frank, and I'm like, actually, that's what we need. We need nobody.
I very much agree. We need regular people to run. This is something that has been on my mind for quite a bit. So I am very happy that you are running. There are some very interesting people who will be running. I'm aware of Brent Bean. He ran last time.
Yes.
A very impressive individual. We don't know if our current representative, Hageman, will want to be governor of Wyoming and run. These are formidable.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, I think a grassroots person can win. I know Brett he's a grassroots guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that he and I probably, if you sat the two of us down in a room, we'd probably sit and agree on almost everything. I think I probably might have a little bit more of a different approach than he would from a solution standpoint. Just as far as like, we have got to unwind. What we need to do is unwind this massive layers of onions that we have created through legislation and laws and rules. We need to reduce it, not increase it, or add more layers to it.
I want to ask your point of view on this. I view a lot of what has happened as a process of corruption, and I would love to see whoever the governor is do a Doge approach at the state level, as was done by Elon Musk and Donald Trump at the federal level. I'm sure we'll find that there's all kinds of money misspent in mysterious ways. And then, of course, there is, that whole process of corruption takes people away from their appointed duty of representing the people and doing what's right. On the issue of property rights and the taxation of homes, when I viewed your video, you favor still taxing people on their homes, but you have like a two-tiered system that if you bought your house at $100,000, you'll get taxed on $100,000. If you just bought recently and you spent $1 million, you're going to get taxed on $1 million. Either way you look at it, we're paying the government for the right to live in our own homes, which I find abominable. And Brent Bean and some of his crew, they went to work on this, and they were trying very hard to do away with taxes on a home altogether. Why would you want to keep taxing homeowners?
I want to go back. So Brent actually spearheaded the People's Initiative, which was a 50% discount. So it was not the elimination of taxes.
For the moment.
Yeah. However, I want to clarify that a little bit because I think that that's important. I think that anything that we do in government right now, like for instance, we got that 25% discount, but what we're not doing, what we're getting is a promise that government's going to mess with it till the end of time. Like, that's what we're getting.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say I give you a 50% discount tomorrow, Frank. Guess what? I'm still going to mess with it till the end of time.
Yes.
Let's say we elect a different legislature, which we will, and they decide, well, gee, we're going to not give that discount anymore. Instead, we're going to go this way with it, right? Here's what we need to do. Step one on my property tax plan is this. Tax people based, first of all, on what they originally paid for their home. Let's start. That's a starting place because let me explain to you. We can't just flip the switch, right? Turn it on and off. So step one is, guess what? All of the problems we have in property taxes are solved by taxing people based on what they paid. That, first of all, that solves the fixed income, the Social Security, the elderly. Guess what? I have 3 kids. I'm married. I live on a fixed income. Our property taxes have gone up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars a year. Where does that money come from? I live on a fixed income too. But I could afford my taxes at the time I bought my home. So there you go. So first you step with that. That's step one. Step two is you actually make a plan to return property to people. And what do I mean by that? You make a plan to eliminate property taxes in Wyoming completely.
Oh, yes.
So that you can own. But it has to be a 2-step process because, Frank, we can't just shut it off.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And something that I would say is that government has no problem finding ways of taxing people. So I would like the taxes. I understand the necessity for funding fire departments, police departments, street maintenance, and all of that. But it's how you get that money. And taxing a person's home, I think, is one of the horriblest ideas ever. What it really means is that we rent from the county. That's what that means.
Well, you're 100% correct, Frank. But not only that, and I don't know if people realize this, our permission-based property rights, right? So we've got to return this stuff to people. You could, as long as you're not a nuisance or trying to build a nuclear power plant on your property, you should be left alone, right? You should be left alone.
Yeah, I agree.
So when you eliminate property taxes, so you make that plan to eliminate property taxes, we got to realize that most counties, and by the way, I have the numbers right here in front of me. Most counties, if you eliminated property tax tomorrow, would see like anywhere from a 10 to a 20% reduction in they get money from other places too, right? Sales tax, other things like that. I'm a big fan on consumption-based taxes. We have to have some kind of tax,
too.
Right?
Me too. I agree.
I'm a huge fan that, if I want to go buy a brand new boat in town and I can afford to do that, guess what? I pay taxes on that, right?
Right.
And of course, you don't tax necessities like food, right? You don't tax those things. But you do tax those, I guess you call them luxury items in a sense, right? You tax based on consumption. And I think that that's okay. One issue that you have in Wyoming is, okay, how do we replace this revenue? So we got to come up with that. I think it's doable. Tourism, energy, rare earth minerals, we can do that. The problem is that we're not quite developed to there. And of course, we know that energy can do this. And so how do we account for that? But it can be done. But I want to go a step further on property rights, Frank, because I think it's important. I think that you should own everything on top of your property. I think you should own the dirt on your property. And I think you should own what's under the dirt on your property.
Agreed.
You know that most of us don't own what's under the dirt.
Exactly.
Right? We don't own it. The state owns it, or some corporation owns it, or what have you. You know what? I'm sorry. That's permission-based freedom.
It is.
And what I want to do as governor is we're done with permission-based freedom, whether it applies to property or education or whatever. We're done with this. We have to give doctors permission to use ivermectin. We have to write a piece of legislation to say, you doctors are allowed to use ivermectin.
That's amazing.
Why aren't doctors, our lead medical professionals, the ones that make that decision instead? We've created this process by which we legislate ourselves to death. There's 165 plus pages of lobbyists registered to get in the Capitol at Wyoming. 165 pages of lobbyists. What makes us think that we, the people, get represented when there are and there's what, 8, 10 organizations on each of those pages. We have
Sure.
maybe, what is it, 1,500 lobbying organizations taking the time from our legislature instead of them being able to really make meaningful solutions for you and me.
It's a process of corruption. The same thing exists in Washington, and I've been up there to lobby. The difference is I had no money. I just had an issue, illegal immigration, and I understood the minute I stepped in there that I was wasting my time because I don't have any money. Okay, in terms of funding so that you don't have to tax the citizenry for living in their own homes, Wyoming has a deal with the federal government in terms of oil and mining and all of that. And the federal government gets a good chunk of change out of that, and we get a little bit. How about renegotiating, and we either keep everything or the greater part of it so that we have more money for ourselves and the feds get less? It's not their land anyways.
Yeah, well, if we dig into that even a little bit deeper, Frank, you obviously know that a lot of that activity, though, is also happening on federal land. We should talk about maybe, okay, what do we do with land? Does the state eventually make a plan to take over those federal lands?
We should, absolutely.
How much? You know what?
How much of our land do the feds have? Like 40%, 30%, or something?
It's a huge chunk. I'd have to look at the actual numbers, but it's millions of acres, right? The issue that I have with the state just going, hey, we want all the land, is I want to see the state actually have a plan on what they're going to do with that land and have the infrastructure to manage and support that land, and not this idea that we're just going to take the land and then figure out what to do with it later. Because let me tell you what that spells to me. That spells that means the state, when we get all that land, oh, we'll sell this land over here. We'll do this. We're going to close the public access over here. We're going to... And I don't want to see that happen. So you've got to have a balance with that. In regards to energy, like, we know that energy, I'm going to just say it this way, energy is the answer, Frank, right? It's the answer to lowering the cost of everything, right? It's the answer to that tax question that you're asking by creating revenue through what we have in this state. Brilliant. Yes, energy has fluctuations, of course, but we can do that. Actually, Mr. Gordon was recently in Asia, trying to sell Wyoming coal to Asia. There are some interesting ideas there. So how do we grow our and of course, we've had a thumb on us for decades, right? It's not just the Biden administration. It's not just the Biden administration. We've had the thumb on American energy and ingenuity for 2 decades.
At least.
And it really is time to get real leadership to unwind this stuff. And it can't happen overnight. You know what? If I get elected governor, I wish I could just push a bunch of buttons, right?
Right.
But the problem is we have created a system that is almost impossible to understand. So that's why when we see stuff, it's hard to get stuff done, because we have created a process that is so complicated. It takes years just to figure out what the heck's going on before you can actually do anything.
Okay.
And so we've got to back it up and unwind it in order for us to actually be able to accomplish some of the things that we talk about.
Okay. So if I were to take in everything you've said about home ownership, in the end, you favor no tax on a person's home, but you have to go through a process, or am I mistaken here?
You have to go through some steps, because absolutely. At the end of the day, none of us should be paying rent. If I paid my mortgage off tomorrow, why am I still...
That should be the end of that. And through this process that we live through, some people get thrown out of their homes because they're old. They don't have enough money. The school needs more money, so the taxes go up on this person's home. They can't afford it. I've spoken to people who have been through this process, and it should not be.
Nobody's going to get thrown out of their home if they're being taxed on what they paid for their home. So let's say those folks bought that house 30 years ago.
I really don't want to pay that.
Just
to be clear, I don't want to pay any of it.
I agree.
I think a home is a sacred space. This is where your babies are born. It's where you lay your head down to die. Government should get out of that, but okay, we are where we're at.
But there are steps you've got to follow, Frank. And
I agree. I
don't know if you saw, but they passed that 25% discount, which, by the way, to me, is just smoke and mirrors, right? It's not a solution.
It'll go back to what it was.
But did you see that multiple counties here in multiple counties are saying, well, we're just raising taxes 25%.
Oh,
did you see that? So there, what county was it? I was reading it. A county. I'm drawing a blank right now. Which county?
Fine, it was. But it's good that you bring that up.
The county literally said we're raising taxes 25% to just offset the 25% discount you guys just got. Like so we have to unwind because So the state says we're not going to do property taxes, and the county says, "Cool, well, we're just going to raise property taxes 100%, and we'll still get that money."
Yeah,
from you.
well, those are people that need to be chased out, and I'm not sure that elections really work. So I want to bring or spring this on you. What about the way that we vote? This is on the part of the state. It's decided by every state. Do you favor keeping the machines, or do you want hand count and pen, paper type stuff?
You know what? I'm in favor of what the people would want on this issue. But if you were going to ask me personally, I do think, there are countries around the world that successfully and with very little fraud conduct elections. You have India with 100+ million people. They vote in one day, they count in one day, and there's no fraud. Or essentially,
I don't think they're using machines either.
So I'm perfectly fine. Okay, so I'm 45, Frank. So I'm a tech generation guy. Well, actually, I'm kind of in the middle, right? So I remember 8-tracks, but I also live today. So I'm in that in between age, that age group where we sort of grew up in this. I think technology can be used correctly. I think it can be. That being said, paper ballots is perfectly fine. We can count them. There's still an opportunity for human error.
Of course.
In that, you remember the hanging Chad debacle, right?
I remember that. Yes.
I think that we have machines that count those paper ballots. Right? So,
but you have human beings that can do so. This has got to be a process that is secure and respectable. At the moment, it is not. There's no trust left in the machines. You mentioned the hanging chads. That was the beginning of the end for elections because that's when the machines were introduced. The Dominion machines. I think those are the ones we're using in Wyoming as well.
Yeah.
And it's got to go.
You cannot have. Well, here's the other thing too, Frank, just to bring this out. The majority of the machine, we're not even counting our own votes in America. Those votes are being tallied overseas in different countries. Like it's absolutely bonkers. If we're going to have votes in Wyoming, we should be counting those votes in Wyoming.
I'm hoping that is the case. Chuck Gray may be another one who may be running for governor. I'm not sure. Yeah. And he's the guy that's in charge of the machines and everything. And he's not gotten rid of the machines. So
although he is, as I understand, he's very much in favor of going back to hand counting.
Oh, he should do it. I don't know why he hasn't done
it. I worry about, I don't worry so much about Wyoming. Yes, we probably have instances of fraud. It's nothing like federal elections or nothing like elections you have in California,
right?
Where you have illegals voting. If you're going to talk about election security, I would say Wyoming probably leads the country already in election security. That being said, there's always work that could be done. Sure, you know what? If the people are like, let's just do paper ballots, you know what? Then let's do paper ballots.
Okay. No, that's what I would favor. Now, you said two magic words, California and illegals. Now, I was raised in California. Los Angeles, as I understand it, you were likewise born and raised in California?
I was raised in Southern California, much like you, Big Bear Lake area, in that great, wonderful, beautiful communist. Well, now is a communist state, right?
It is. Yeah. Were you born there, or where were you born?
I was born in West Covina.
Okay, great. I was born in Guantanamo, Cuba. Everybody's heard of Guantanamo because of the naval base there.
Sure.
And we came to the United States when I was about 6, almost 7 years old, 2 years before Fidel Castro took over. But I've kind of kept tabs on what's happened with that country, and I owe my allegiance to this country exclusively. I am an American citizen. It's worrisome to see how so many of our American brethren see communism or socialism, I don't know how to distinguish between one and the other very well, as a solution to our problems. Yet, if you look at Cuba, 90 miles off the coast, it's a disaster. It's a complete disaster. They barely have any electricity. Water is hard to come by. Even food is hard to come by, and that's because of the socialist communist economy. And yet we're being driven in that direction, even in Wyoming, by forces that are in the background. You don't even see them much.
Yeah.
And it is an item of concern. So California is a disaster on many fronts. Commiefornia is what people call it, and they're right.
Yep. Or don't Californicate my Wyoming.
Exactly. And what we don't want, we don't want Wyoming to become California. Now, illegal aliens, that's a huge problem in California. It's made the state undesirable. You got people selling stuff on the streets without any licensing for health, taco trucks and hand trucks and all kinds of stuff out there. Mm-hmm. And the illegal aliens have taken over the construction industry, which means that young American men, cannot get in there because they're not willing to work for the lower wages that the illegal aliens will work for. Illegal aliens do vote in California. They're issued a California driver's license. Why the federal government has not shut that down under Donald Trump, I don't know. But okay, everything that I saw on your webpage, and it's great. I'll put a link up here for that soon. You did not go into the issue of illegal immigration.
Yeah, you know what? There is a page under the issues on illegal immigration, and I have two things to say about this. I don't know. I want to encourage the audience to go look at Roy Beck's 2010 video about immigration, world poverty, and gumballs. It is an incredible video that shows why illegal immigration, not only destroys the country, us, the receiving end, it's also destroying the country where they're coming from, because they're missing out on those folks as well. But not only that, the fact that we work in our immigration system to attract the best and the brightest from other countries, and then guess what happens to their home country?
Sure.
The best and the brightest are leaving there, and therefore their situation is not being improved. But anyway, go watch that video. When it comes to immigration, it's funny, I'm a Christian, Frank. You probably gathered that from my website.
Yes, I've seen that, yeah.
Jesus said to love the foreigner among you, right? Mm-hmm. And to care for the foreigner among you. But he also said, or the New Testament, it talks about how to do that in the right way, right? And a lot of times, Americans are generous. We help everybody around the world in incredible ways. But what we've done here, California has gone so far as to say it's illegal to check an ID at a voting poll.
Right, yeah.
He signed that right before the last presidential election. Governor Newsom signed that, made it illegal. Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? Why? Because you want to stay in power. You want to keep elections. There is a right and a wrong way to immigrate, and here's what we've had for the last 4 years. Countries around the world emptying their prisons and dropping these people off at our southern border and saying, go to America. That's where you should go. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when you talk about immigration, we're doing the right thing now. We've closed our borders, immigrate here legally. We should care for our fellow man and love our fellow man. Because that's a principle I think that should be as at the core of America, is that we do that. But the problem is especially not so much in this state, but when you look at the border states like Texas and stuff, our infrastructure cannot support millions of people coming across the street and getting free medical care and education and all this stuff. And it's destroying our culture.
It is.
As a nation.
It is.
And so come here legally. Don't commit crimes. You know what? Speak English. I'm sorry. If you are in this country and you are here legally or whatever, speak our language.
Okay. Look, one
Like,
of the problems
you know,
that we have had has been with the federal government not addressing this issue
yeah,
as they should.
yeah,
They say that it's a federal issue, but the consequences are 100% local. I know
absolutely,
lots of
absolutely.
people who have had a son, a father, a mother, a daughter killed by an illegal alien, either through intent or by accident.
Yes,
Among the very best who come from other countries illegally because they have no other way of doing it, we
yeah,
run the risk that they come with a contagious disease. We've been through the whole COVID scam, which is what I think it
yes,
was,
yep, yep,
almost a year and a half ago or whatever it was. And that was a highly contagious disease. How it got here is
hmm,
an issue for another day.
hmm,
But the point of it is that a governor, I think, has a duty to protect his people.
yes,
And that may mean a fight with the federal government, but it has
yeah,
got to be done.
yeah,
Just recently, they arrested a Mexican national who had thousands of rounds in his car. I don't know if,
yes,
I cannot recall if this was in Cheyenne or where he was traveling through. And he's just the tip of the iceberg. He's the one that got caught. The ones that have not been caught, who may be here with ill intent, CIA, FBI say we have terrorists who are here, and
oh yeah,
that's a logical conclusion. You know, we in this state have not allowed any police entity to address the issue of illegal immigration. We receive zero protection when it comes to this. I called the governor's office. I've spoken to the state troopers. I've spoken to local police. When they come across an illegal, unless it's this situation where this guy had thousands of rounds, they let him go. They stop him for a
yes,
traffic
yeah,
violation. They let him go. They may have let go a terrorist for all that we know.
yeah.
And this is because of our relationship with the federal government and the unwillingness of governors to do anything about this problem. Wyoming is waiting to become California if this is
You
not
know,
addressed.
I was telling someone yesterday that we're about one election away, from tyranny, complete
Yeah,
tyranny,
yeah.
whether it's on the local level or on the federal level. And God has given us His grace, I believe, right now to hopefully make some changes. I will tell you, Frank, that they are working on changing this right now. What we don't have is a lot of cooperation, and we're working on that. There are multiple sheriffs across the state who are building cooperative teams with the feds to address this issue and to address the process
Well,
for
if
this.
you were governor, what would you do about this?
100%. Okay, so two things. Let's say I get elected and I come into office 2027, but
Hmm.
then we get a bozo in the presidency in 2028. I will stand up against the federal government. First of all, I will say that. I know we haven't seen that in the past with our recent
Right,
leaders
right.
where, oh, yeah, we're going to shut down Wyoming Energy because of COVID, which was allowed to happen. You will not
Hmm.
get that from me. I will stand up and say, no, you're not shutting down Wyoming Energy. I will tell the federal government to pound sand and use any bit of power that I have, which, by the way, is limited,
Hmm.
but every bit of power that I have to make sure that happens. Same thing comes with illegal immigration. You know what? Come here legally. I'll certainly support, because this goes down to our sheriff's offices, our law enforcement officials in the
Yes.
state that lead the state. I will support them in collaborating with the federal government to clean up this mess. And by the way, our recent legislature has also been working very hard. Again, we have to give permission to everybody for everything to support our law enforcement across the state, to collaborate with the feds to get this issue cleaned up.
Hmm.
But you're right. We're one election away, from putting only God knows the future. Only God knows who the next president of the United States is.
Right. We don't
You
know.
know,
Let me add
yeah.
this to the topic, which is I don't know if you're aware of the 287G program, which is with the federal government. You take a policeman or a trooper and you send them away for about 1 month. The federal government pays for it, but they become trained to become like an ICE agent. And whether it's here in the town of Basin that I live in, or I don't know what town you're in. What town are you in?
I'm actually just north of Cheyenne.
Okay. You will have police officers, and we should have them all over the state, at least one from each area, that is fully trained to be able to vet a person as to whether they're here legally or not, because this is a very serious issue. So if you become governor, I hope that you would push for this. You know,
we have to do that, Frank. In fact, I'm good friends with a gentleman who is running for Albany County Sheriff this next time around, by the way, because they've got a real mess on their hands in Albany County. And we've talked about some of this stuff, and it's like, right, we've got to do this training. We've got to stop closing our eyes, because we're headed that direction. You're not wrong. And I want to say something out of the human heart and compassion side of who I am, Frank, at this point, because, and I don't know how much you've been around the world, but I've been, to Africa and Korea, and I've been to Mexico. I've been deep into Mexico. I've been deep into Central America, South America. I don't blame people for wanting to come here.
I don't either. But it's my job to keep them out.
I don't. And we cannot be doors open because it wrecks the culture, because so many of them aren't coming here to assimilate, right? They're not coming here. Let me give you an example. A good buddy of mine actually is coming to Wyoming. He'll probably be moving to Wyoming here in the next 6 months from Europe. They're allowing 2 million illegal immigrants into Europe every single year right now. It has utterly destroyed them.
It has.
I mean, they are, mark my words, give it another 5 or 10 years and Europe is going to be unrecognizable.
Yep.
You cannot do that. And he's, he can't even buy a kitchen knife without filling out a whole bunch of paperwork and showing his ID.
Yes, because the Muslims are stabbing people.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and they have to pay a permit to have a TV. I mean, and the list goes on. I mean, it's horrible.
It is.
And so, but guess what? He will be coming here in a legal way to hopefully build a life for him and his sons. And that's what he wants to do. We have a process by which that could be done, Frank, and we need to follow that process. And at the same time, I mean, my heart, the compassion part of who I am, is like, I understand why people want to come here.
I do. I look, it breaks my heart when I see I'm bilingual. I do speak Spanish, so I've spoken to people who have come here from Mexico, and they had no choice in their point of view, and they were right. They couldn't earn a living. They couldn't do anything in Mexico, but they're here illegally. And the issue again becomes one of, who are you? Do you have a contagious disease? You can't come in this way. I'm sorry. We can't accommodate everybody.
What if what we did, because we're the most generous nation in the world,
to everybody except our own citizens, I would say.
Right, I know you're not wrong, but what if we did kind of what Roy Beck says in his Gumball video? What if we help them where they are? What if we stopped taking their best and their brightest out of their country, and we started helping them where they are? Because you know what? That's the American spirit.
Well,
right?
we've doled out billions in foreign aid. And I'll tell you something. I would send them a DVD and get them to solve their own problems. I don't want to give them. I don't want to give them any more money because we don't have any. Okay, we mentioned another thing. We very briefly touched upon Islam, Muslims. We have at least seven mosques in Wyoming. The FBI a long time ago identified that mosques were places where recruitment would take place for terrorist actions. You as governor, what would happen with the mosques?
Oh, you know what? I'm not going to infringe on people's religious rights in America. Obviously, I'm a Christian, a Christ follower. Obviously, Islam is not something I think is good for the world. I think it's a lie. And obviously, their goal would be to destroy us, right? I mean, that is their
conquest. They're about conquest.
Their holy book even says so.
Right.
But Frank, we cannot and will not infringe on people's right to express their religious and faith, regardless of whether it's Islam.
You might want to keep an eye on the mosque, though.
And well, no, I hear you on that, Frank. I totally hear you on that. But this country literally was founded on religious freedom, whether I agree with it or not. I'm not going to, I guess you'd say discriminate.
Well, you can't take people's, you cannot take constitutional freedoms away. You cannot, but you can sort of keep an eye on things. I want to go in a different direction. How do you feel about transsexuals, gays, and men who identify as women showing up in the dressing room of girls for high school or college and such? How do you feel about that?
Let me keep it really simple for you. Your bedroom habits are your business. The minute you walk out of that door, you should assimilate into what our society accepts as appropriate, normal, and good and healthy. I don't know a single human being whose lives are not affected by these issues in some way. Whether it's a cousin or an aunt or somebody who has somebody in their family who has one of these alignments, one of these illnesses, one of these things, right? But so man and a woman, two sexes, absolutely not. Men, biological born men, do not belong in women's sports or women's locker rooms, period. Why we have to legislate or even have this conversation, I think, is sad.
Isn't it?
I think it's sick. I think what we've done to our kids and the last couple of generations is disgusting because we've misguided them and confused them about who God made them to be. I know a lot. I personally know people that are in that community. And this is what I will say, in love and in compassion. Most of them, because I'm a root causes guy, Frank, so everything that I do as governor will be looking at root causes. I'm not going to look at why, I'm not going to look at their orientation. What I want to know is why. That's the question I want to ask is why. Most of these people have severe life trauma of some kind. Severe life trauma, whether in childhood or going into adulthood. Pharmaceuticals, they've been given a bill of good with pharmaceuticals, and that's changed the way that they think and feel. So it's caused them to, hey, you know what? I've been taking all of these different hormone blockers and all this stuff. Well, suddenly I feel like I'm a man. No. What you've done is you've taken these pharmaceuticals and it's changed your biology.
Yeah, well, there's that. And, whatever it is, I don't want to see a man walking into a woman's restroom.
No, not going to happen. No, and I agree with you. And we're not, for me, it's real cut and dry. It's a hard no. It's unfortunate we have to have this discussion. But again, I go back to my heart's compassion towards these folks. And I realize that most of these folks have had an event or multiple events in their lives that have caused them to lose sight of who they are.
Oh, yeah. Look, I look at them with compassion as well, but their rights end where mine begin and vice versa. Want to move on to something else very important.
I'm with you on that, Frank, 100%. I want to be clear on that. I'm with you on that.
Okay. State of Wyoming, Second Amendment rights. How do you feel about our gun rights?
We're not there yet, Frank, because what we haven't done is deleted gun legislation. Until we delete gun legislation and say, Wyoming is a state which recognizes the Second Amendment of the United States, we accept the benefits and the consequences of that decision. Stop.
Okay.
We're not there yet.
No.
Because we still have massive amounts of bureaucracy that controls our Second Amendment rights.
Right. And we're running out of time, so I want to push into a couple of more things. Welfare. I would say that welfare has destroyed more families than it has helped. How do you feel about welfare in the state of Wyoming? And
first of all, in the state of Wyoming, that if someone is on welfare, they are actually required to find work and to get work. So I do like that. I think that it's really important that boundaries are set. I'm going to go back to, again, Jesus said that the poor will always be with you, and you ought to take care of them when you can and how you can.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we've done with the state, and by the way, the Wyoming Constitution facilitates this, by the way, is rather than giving the ability maybe to church organizations or to people to help other people, that we've made it government's job to do this. So, and by the way, we've done that in the Wyoming Constitution. So I think welfare is one of those great, well-intentioned programs gone horribly awry and enabling people to be lazy, sit on their hands, sit on the couch, when they're perfectly capable of getting any one of the tens of thousands of jobs that are available. But we've enabled people. Yeah, and by the way, we have a better program in Wyoming than, say, you get in like a state of like Colorado or California, or where there are a lot of requirements attached to that. Now, I would question whether or not we hold people to those requirements, because guess what? Hunger is a great motivator to get off your butt.
Oh yeah.
But there are, Frank, people in our state who are truly disabled, who are truly unable to provide for themselves, who do need that help, who are truly poor and need that. And so we ought to find ways to help them and support them and bring them through life and love them. Does the government do the best job at that? I would say no. Mostly everything that government touches is a total mess. So making sure that people are not enabled. And hey, you know what? I got a buddy. I lead a Monday night Bible study, Frank, and he recently lost his job. No fault of his own. He was in the telecom business, lost his job. All the big contracts ended, whatever. I'd like to see families like him get a couple of months of help while he finds a job. I got no issue with that. That's a true need out of his control. Let's help him. But let's put a boundary on that and say, hey, you know what? You got 3 months, 6 months to find a job. Pull up your bootstraps. Go mow lawns if you need to. Go wash cars.
Flip burgers, whatever.
Do what you need to do. We'll help you get through this hard time. But guess what? The spigot gets turned off after 4 months. So you better have your stuff figured out by then.
Okay.
So I think that Jesus commands us to do that, but I think you got to set those healthy boundaries. You're not going to enable people. Don't enable people. I got people on my campaign team, Frank, who have joined my team, and they're volunteering. I'm so thankful for them. Some of them they truly need that support. They don't have the abilities to even flip burgers, Frank.
That is understandable. And I want to get to, we've got about 2 more questions and then we're done. And thank you for your time. I thought this was going to be a 15-minute interview, but there's,
I love this, Frank. I could do this all day with you if you want to.
There's enough substance here, and you've been great. With respect to our young people who go through school, 12 years of school. And when I went through the school system in California, one of my thoughts upon graduation was, I don't know how to do anything for a living, nothing. I don't have a trade. 12 years of going to school, and I have nothing. Would you look at our educational system here in Wyoming and try to get the trades going, things that young men and young women can learn to earn a living, as opposed to having gone through school for 12 years and you don't know how to do anything to feed yourself?
Yeah. Okay. Frank, how much time do you have? Education. Okay. I'm going to try to sum up my education policy really quick, Frank, here. First of all, I want to say that we are expanding right now, and I'm so proud of Wyoming, Wyotech, right? And there is a waiting list a mile long of people, our kids, mostly kids, but adults too, wanting to get into Wyotech to learn skills. So kudos to us for that. Let me unpack education for you. First of all, we've been legislating education for decades. Results are going this way, and cost is going this way. Right. Education is a mess.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you where I stand on it in as briefly as possible as we wrap up this interview. It needs to be torn totally back to the studs. notice I said back to the studs. We're not eliminating the foundation and the studs. We need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
1st through 4th grade, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Boom, in the morning. Now, if I had it my way, those kids would go home before lunch and they would play the rest of the day in 1st through 4th grade. They would figure out, they would discover life and discover things. Now, our culture doesn't support that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So morning is reading, writing, and arithmetic. Afternoon is interest-based learning. And you have like 20 different things that they can do, from playing on the playground to building Legos to looking through microscopes to STEM. And that's what they do all afternoon, whatever they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to play on the playground, they do that. If they want to learn something about music, they can do that. If they want to learn how to build things out of Legos, they do that. Interest-based learning in the afternoon. 5th through 8th grade, almost the same model. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Because guess what? Our kids can't even do that. Mm-hmm. And without that, they can't do other things. And then in 5th through 8th grade, you focus them in the afternoon, because guess what? In 1st through 4th grade, they discovered what they're actually interested in. Maybe it is music. Maybe it is building and engineering. Maybe it is technology. Maybe it is playing outside on the playground and sports and things like that. And you start then in the afternoon to start honing them for careers in 5th through 8th grade. They know what they like to do. My son is great at building things and fixing problems, not so great at literature. So let's guide him that direction. My daughter's the opposite. So you do that, and you know what? You do that in 5th through 8th grade. In 9th and 10th grade, you get them ready for careers. Why do we go to school for 12 years? I don't even know the answer to that question.
Exactly.
There's no reason to, because guess what? Like you said, you get out and you don't know anything.
Yep.
In 9th and 10th grade, you prepare them for what they're going for. If they're going to be a doctor, then in 9th and 10th grade, they do doctor stuff. If they're going to be and then they got to go on to further education. But in 9th and 10th grade, you can get people workforce ready,
mm-hmm.
whether they're going into HVAC or they're going to go, work their way up the ladder in
automotive, electronics, networking,
anywhere, right?
computers. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a real education.
I'd like to see kids graduating at 10th grade. I think that we should do that, because they should know how to do stuff by that. Mm-hmm. And then guess what? If they're going to go into medicine, law enforcement, open a legal firm, become a CPA or an accountant or something like that, they go on to the next stage of education.
Yes.
At college. But you know what? At college, all they need to do, I'm talking about changing a whole culture here, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
At college, if they're going to be an accountant, all they do at college is accountant-related stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to do, but they also got to take a class about poems, and they got to take a this class about culture and a this class. No, they're going to focus on accounting, or they're going to focus on being a doctor, or they're going to focus on being a lawyer. Instead of, it is mortifying to me on the amount of life that we waste.
Oh God, yes.
That we waste, that we make our kids waste.
Yes.
In education that serves them in no way. Mm-hmm. In their life. Mm-hmm. My son might be a contractor because that's what he's good at. Guess mm-hmm. what? Mm-hmm. That's all he needs to learn. I mean, yeah, he in reading, writing, and arithmetic, he will learn the basics of science, the basics of history, the basics of all of these things, right? The basics of culture and social studies. That'll be learned in reading, writing, and arithmetic. Mm-hmm. But then what do you love? And let's drive them towards that. So, boy, that's my really brief answer on a topic that I realize a lot of what I said, your audience is going to look at me and go, what is he talking about?
I find it interesting.
But that's like the highlights. We have to talk about it more in depth in order to really
I understand.
talk about it.
I have a last question for you,
yeah.
And I do want to thank you for your time. You've been very generous, and I'm very delighted with the interactions that we've had. What do you do for a living? How do you earn your living?
Oh, that's a great question. So I've owned a web development and marketing company for 20 years. And on the side of that, I've always had, like, for instance, we do a bunch of things here with our ranch and our farm and stuff like that. We sell eggs, we milk goats, we do mm-hmm. things like that. Mm-hmm. I've got a background I was a firefighter for 20 years, including the leading a company officer in charge of a station and a crew. We were more like volunteers, did about 300 or 400 calls a year. I've been a chief operating officer for multiple companies, a facilities director, always kind of been a leader wherever I've traveled. Obviously always had an interest in leadership when it comes to government, and really felt led to do what I'm doing now. But I think that, my gifts are leadership and administration, discernment. Those are the gifts that God's given to me, and I'm just really trying to put those to work now. But yeah, so I own a company. I prefer, actually, though, if you had to ask me, I'd rather not be sitting in front of a computer, which I don't do a lot anymore. I own and run my companies. I'm not so much in the day-to-day. My staff does that now. I've obviously put my time in. I would rather be out in my little tractor, doing things around like that now. But yeah, so that's what I do for a living, or have done. I was a tech kid, so kind of got into the internet and websites and stuff like that in the early 2000s. And so that's what I've done for a living for most of that time.
Okay. Now, if we have some high-profile people like Hageman come on the scene and want to run for governor, are you going to drop out, or are you going to stay there and debate and fight for the governorship?
That's a great question. Everybody that interviews me asks me that question, Frank, and the answer is no, I'm not going to drop out, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I have heard that some of the other candidates have said that if she runs, they are going to drop out. We'll see if they actually decide to do that. I will not, for a couple of reasons, and here's a couple of reasons, Frank. One is I love what Ms. Hageman is doing in D.C. She is a lawmaker, by the way, by trade. That was her profession. She's only recently, in the last couple of years, gotten into politics and government and things like that. So from a practical standpoint, my question is, do we need a lawmaker as governor? I think that she'd be a great attorney general. That's an appointed position by the governor, by the way. I think she's suited for certain positions. From a leadership standpoint, I probably have spades in leadership experience over what she might have, even though she does now have some experience in government. Obviously, we just put her in Congress. So that's my answer to that question. Okay. I think I've got a lot to bring to the table that the other candidates might not bring to the table. And so, yeah, my answer right now is, and by the way, I've reached out to her office. I've been in conversation with Brent about meeting with him. I'd like to meet with him. I'd like to sit down with him. I would like to sit down and speak with her. I don't know that she's made a decision yet on that, but that's where I stand on it right now. Right now, and the other part of this, and I don't want anyone else to get this idea, but for me, does a real leader step out when it's a little bit hard? I don't think so. Yeah, would she have? Yeah, she probably has the machine behind her, the political machine behind her. And probably the funds and things like that. But I'm not after PACs, Frank. I'm after people. I'm not after PACs. I'm after people. And I think that that's really important. I think that's a message that will resonate with the people of Wyoming.
Very good. Well, look, I want to thank you for your time and such. Yeah. Why don't you give us a closing statement, if you would, please?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. If you've taken the time to watch this, I really, really appreciate it. If you're like, wow, I'd like to get involved. I'd like to help out with this campaign for governor, they can go to Joseph4wy.com, Frank, Joseph4wy.com. On there, obviously, my phone number's on there. They can call me. They can text me. They can email me. They can connect with me on all my social media channels. So that would be just kind of my closing statement. And you know what? For me, I was told early on, because I started running in January, Frank, said, Joseph, you can run on common sense. It seems like you're a common sense kind of a guy, but you can't win on common sense. And I will say this, challenge accepted. We're going to try to win on common sense and regular grassroots people. And all we need is the people to believe it. We don't need the PACs. We don't need the politicians. We don't need the endorsements. If the people can believe and understand the solutions that I bring to the table are real and tangible, let's do this thing, Frank. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. And let's get more people like me elected that want to do this too. I think that's really important.
Thank you, Joseph. Wishing you the best of luck. And hey, maybe down the road we'll interview you again as you go forwards in your quest. God bless and thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, Frank, anytime you want to do this, let's do it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching and listening. And if you enjoyed this particular interview, I want to tell you that I hope to be able to get more of the folks that will be running for governor here in Wyoming. And hopefully they will interview for me as Mr. Joseph Kibler has. And of course, I have put here where you can find Joseph on the internet. He has a good presence there. So if you want to make contact, he's a very friendly person to interact with. Thank you. May God bless. Bye-bye.